There comes a moment when you must stop asking, "What are they thinking after I disappeared?" and begin asking, "Who am I becoming now that I am free?" That question changes everything. Many people establish no contact but remain emotionally connected through curiosity. They stop sending messages, yet they continue checking social media. They block the number, yet they still imagine the reaction. They leave physically, but mentally they are still standing inside the same relationship, waiting for the other person to finally recognize what they lost. But hear this clearly. Your healing cannot depend on someone else's awakening. The truth about narcissistic behavior after no contact is not simply about what happens to the person you left. It is about what happens inside you when manipulation no longer has daily access to your mind. It is about recovering your voice, rebuilding your standards, and remembering that peace is not something another person gives you. Peace is something you protect. No contact is not a weapon. It is a boundary. It is not punishment. It is protection. It is not about proving that you can disappear. It is about proving to yourself that you can survive without returning to what repeatedly wounded you. No contact does not instantly erase emotional attachment, history, memory, or habit. What it removes first is access. That distinction is important because many people begin no contact expecting an immediate transformation in the other person. They imagine that silence will suddenly create self-awareness, produce remorse, or force the individual to recognize every hurtful action. But no contact is not a tool for controlling someone else's emotions. It is a boundary that protects your mind, your time, your energy, and your future. When a person has become accustomed to reaching you whenever they want, your availability can begin to feel like something they own. They may assume they can call after hurting you, send a message after disrespecting you, offer a small apology, and return to the same pattern. They may believe that your compassion guarantees permanent access. Each time you explain yourself again, answer another accusation, or respond to another emotional crisis, the cycle is kept alive. No contact interrupts that cycle. It removes the opportunity to provoke an immediate reaction. It ends the endless discussions in which you are pressured to defend your feelings. It prevents temporary charm from quickly covering repeated behavior. Most importantly, it gives you enough distance to see the relationship without being continuously influenced by the next promise, argument, apology, or emotional performance. However, the loss of access does not mean the other person immediately stops thinking about you. They may feel curious, frustrated, rejected, confused, angry, or unsettled. They may remember the attention you gave, the problems you solved, the reassurance you provided, or the forgiveness you repeatedly offered. They may miss the comfort of knowing you were available. But you must understand that missing access is not always the same as missing you in a healthy and loving way. A person can miss what you provided without appreciating who you are. They can miss your support without respecting your boundaries. They can miss your loyalty while refusing to practice loyalty themselves. They can miss the emotional benefits of the relationship without accepting responsibility for the damage they caused. This is why you cannot judge change merely by how strongly someone reacts when you leave. A dramatic response does not automatically prove deep love. Repeated calls do not prove transformation. Sudden apologies do not prove accountability. Emotional words do not prove that a destructive pattern has ended. Real change requires more than discomfort over losing access. It requires honesty, self-examination, responsibility, patience, and consistent behavior over time. It requires the person to acknowledge what happened without blaming you for their choices. It requires them to respect your boundary even when that boundary is painful for them. It requires a willingness to change when there is no guarantee that you will return. Do not allow urgency to replace evidence. Someone may insist that they have changed because they fear losing you permanently. They may promise that everything will be different. They may remind you of good memories, appeal to your compassion, or present themselves as misunderstood. But you must learn to separate emotional pressure from genuine growth. Genuine growth does not demand instant forgiveness. Genuine growth does not punish you for needing space. Genuine growth does not use guilt to reopen a closed door. Genuine growth respects the consequences of past behavior. No contact also reveals how deeply your own identity may have become connected to the relationship. You may discover that even without direct communication, you still feel compelled to check their social media, ask mutual friends about them, or imagine how they are reacting. You may stop speaking to them while continuing to organize your thoughts around them. This is where the deeper work begins. Physical distance is only the first step. Emotional freedom requires you to stop measuring your progress by their reaction. You cannot make your healing dependent on whether they miss you, regret losing you, become jealous, or attempt to return. The moment their response becomes the proof of your value, they still have influence over you. Your value existed before their attention. Your value remained during their disrespect. Your value continues after their absence. No contact must become a decision to return to yourself. Use the silence to examine what you tolerated, what you ignored, and what you must never normalize again. Rebuild routines that do not include emotional chaos. Strengthen relationships with trustworthy people. Write down the reasons you created the boundary, especially for moments when loneliness tries to rewrite the past. Remember the whole pattern, not only the pleasant moments. You may miss someone and still know that contact is unhealthy. You may care about them and still choose distance. You may forgive them internally and still refuse renewed access. Compassion does not require you to abandon wisdom. Access to your life should be earned through honesty, respect, consistency, and responsibility. It should never be guaranteed merely because someone wants it. No contact teaches you that your attention is valuable, your peace deserves protection, and your boundaries are not cruelty. The purpose is not to make the other person suffer. The purpose is to stop participating in what was making you suffer. That is the first powerful truth. No contact may remove their access to you, but its greatest purpose is to restore your access to your own clarity, strength, dignity, and future. When a person reacts strongly after losing access to you, do not automatically interpret that reaction as proof of deep love. Sometimes what appears to be heartbreak is actually discomfort caused by the loss of control. This is one of the most important truths you must understand after ending contact with someone who repeatedly manipulated your emotions. The intensity of their response does not always reveal the purity of their intentions. A person can become desperate to regain access without becoming willing to change the behavior that made distance necessary. They may suddenly call more often. They may send long messages filled with apologies, promises, memories, and emotional language. They may tell you that they have finally understood your value. They may claim that nobody compares to you. They may remind you of the good moments while avoiding honest discussion about the harm they caused. This can be confusing because you may have waited a long time to hear those words. You may think perhaps they have finally changed. But change is not proven by emotional urgency. Change is demonstrated through accountability, patience, humility, consistency, and respect for your boundaries. A person who has truly changed does not demand immediate access to you. They do not pressure you to forgive before trust has been rebuilt. They do not punish you for needing space. They do not make your boundary the main problem while ignoring the behavior that created it. Real growth accepts consequences. Real remorse does not simply say, "I miss you." It says, "I understand how my actions affected you, and I'm willing to do the difficult work of becoming different, even if you never return." Lost control can create panic in people who were accustomed to directing the emotional rhythm of the relationship. They knew how to upset you, calm you, confuse you, blame you, and bring you back. Your attention may have become something they expected to receive whenever they wanted it. When that access disappears, they may feel rejected, powerless, or exposed. Their reaction may become dramatic because your silence proves that their influence is no longer guaranteed. This is why they may alternate between kindness and anger. One day they may sound loving, regretful, and gentle. The next day, they may accuse you of being cruel, selfish, immature, or disloyal. They may praise you when praise seems likely to reopen the door, then criticize you when praise fails. This emotional switching is not evidence that you should return. It is evidence that you should watch patterns more carefully than words. You must learn to distinguish between someone wanting you and someone respecting you. Desire alone is not enough. A person may want your attention, your emotional support, your loyalty, your forgiveness, your availability, or your reassurance. But wanting what you provide is not the same as valuing who you are. Respect appears in the way a person handles your no. Respect appears when your needs are taken seriously. Respect appears when accountability is accepted without excuses. Respect appears when change continues, even when there is no immediate reward. Do not let one emotional conversation erase months or years of harmful patterns. A powerful speech is not the same as a transformed character. Tears are not always evidence of maturity. Promises are not proof. Urgency is not responsibility. Anyone can become persuasive when they feel something slipping away. The question is not whether they sound sincere in one moment. The question is whether their behavior remains healthy over time. This is where your discipline becomes necessary. Your emotions may remember the connection, but your wisdom must remember the pattern. You may feel compassion for their pain without surrendering your boundary. You may understand their fear without becoming responsible for fixing it. You may forgive them in your heart without restoring the access they repeatedly misused. Do not allow guilt to convince you that protecting yourself is cruelty. A boundary does not become wrong simply because another person dislikes it. Your responsibility is not to make everyone comfortable with your decision. Your responsibility is to protect your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. The greatest mistake you can make is returning because their reaction made you feel important. You were already important before they panicked. You were valuable before they began calling. Your worth did not suddenly increase because they feared losing you. The issue was never your value. The issue was their failure to honor it consistently. So remain clear. Do not measure love by how loudly someone protests your departure. Measure love by how safely they treated your presence. Do not be impressed only by what they say when you leave. Remember what they repeatedly did while you stayed. That truth will protect you from confusing lost control with genuine transformation. Silence becomes powerful only when it is used for healing, not as a hidden weapon against the person you left. Many people enter no contact believing that the absence itself will force the other person to change, regret their behavior, or finally understand their value. But the moment your silence depends on another person's reaction, it is no longer freedom. It becomes another form of emotional attachment. You may have stopped speaking to them, but you are still waiting for them to respond. You may have blocked their number, but your mind remains open to every imagined apology, every possible return, and every sign that they are suffering without you. That is not the true purpose of no contact. No contact is not a competition to determine who cares less. It is not a strategy for making someone jealous. It is not a test designed to see how quickly they will chase you. It is a protected space in which your mind can become clear again. It gives you the opportunity to step away from emotional pressure long enough to examine the relationship without constant interference, guilt, promises, accusations, or manipulation. When you have spent a long time in an unstable relationship, silence may initially feel uncomfortable. You may have become accustomed to emotional intensity. The arguments, apologies, affection, withdrawal, blame, and reconciliation may have created a cycle that kept your nervous system constantly alert. You did not know what mood was coming next. You did not know whether you would be praised, criticized, ignored, or pulled back into another conflict. When that cycle suddenly stops, peace may feel unfamiliar. Do not confuse unfamiliar peace with emptiness. Sometimes people return to unhealthy situations because calm feels strange. They interpret the absence of emotional drama as loneliness. They mistake stability for boredom because their minds were trained to expect chaos. But healing requires you to remain in peaceful spaces long enough for your mind to recognize that safety is not something to fear. Silence allows your emotions to settle. It helps you separate facts from manipulation. It gives you time to ask questions you could not ask while you were constantly defending yourself. What did this relationship teach you? Which boundaries were ignored? Which behaviors did you excuse? Which parts of yourself became smaller in order to keep the relationship alive? These questions are not meant to make you blame yourself. You're not responsible for another person's harmful behavior. However, you are responsible for learning from what happened so that the same pattern does not continue in your future. Silence should become a classroom. In that classroom, you begin to study your emotional habits. You discover why certain words had so much power over you. You recognize why you kept hoping for change even when the pattern remained the same. You understand why you felt guilty for protecting yourself. You begin to identify the difference between genuine love and emotional dependency. This is where your strength begins to return. Healing silence does not mean isolating yourself from everyone. It means creating distance from the source of confusion while moving closer to healthy support. Speak to trusted friends. Write down your experiences. Seek professional guidance when necessary. Rebuild routines that strengthen your body and mind. Sleep properly. Move your body. Return to meaningful work. Read, learn, pray, reflect, and reconnect with the parts of yourself that were neglected. Every healthy action becomes a message to your mind. My life is worth rebuilding. Do not spend your silence checking their social media. Do not ask mutual friends for updates. Do not create imaginary conversations in which you finally prove your point. Every time you investigate their life, you reopen the emotional door you were trying to close. Your healing does not require constant information about them. It requires greater awareness of yourself. Ask yourself whether you are becoming more peaceful, more disciplined, and more confident. Ask whether you are learning to trust your judgment again. Ask whether you can make decisions without imagining their reaction. Ask whether your standards are becoming stronger than your loneliness. These are the signs that silence is working. The greatest purpose of silence is not to make another person miss your voice. It is to help you hear your own voice again. For too long, your thoughts may have been buried beneath criticism, confusion, fear, and the need for approval. In silence, your inner truth begins to rise. You remember what you value. You remember what respect should feel like. You remember that love should not require the destruction of your identity. Eventually, silence becomes more than the absence of communication. It becomes the presence of clarity. It becomes a space where dignity is restored, wisdom is developed, and new standards are formed. Use this season well. Do not waste it waiting for someone else to change. Use it to become someone who will never again abandon themselves for the temporary attention of another person. That is the real power of silence. Your greatest victory is not that someone regrets losing you. Your greatest victory is that their regret, anger, silence, approval, or rejection no longer controls your emotions. That is the real meaning of emotional independence. It is the moment when you stop waiting for another person's reaction to confirm that you made the right decision. It is the moment when you realize that your peace does not need permission, your healing does not need an apology, and your future does not need approval from the person who repeatedly disturbed your life. Many people leave a harmful relationship physically but remain connected emotionally. They stop answering calls, but they still wonder whether the other person misses them. They block the messages, but they continue checking social media. They establish distance, but their mind remains trapped in the same cycle. They still want to know whether the other person is suffering, whether they have changed, whether they feel guilty, or whether they finally understand the value of what they lost. But as long as your emotional condition depends on their response, they still possess influence over you. Freedom begins when you no longer need to know. You do not need to know whether they regret losing you. You need to remember why you chose peace. You do not need to know whether they are happy without you. You need to build a life that is healthy with or without anyone's presence. You do not need to know whether they have found someone else. You need to ensure that you never again abandon yourself simply to keep another person. Emotional independence means you stop measuring your worth through another person's treatment of you. Their inability to appreciate you does not reduce your value. Their refusal to respect your boundaries does not make those boundaries unreasonable. Their decision to blame you does not make you guilty. Their anger does not mean you are wrong. Their silence does not mean you are unimportant. You must learn to separate their behavior from your identity. A person may reject you because your growth threatens their control. They may criticize you because your boundaries expose their behavior. They may attempt to make you feel guilty because guilt once kept you available, but you must not confuse their discomfort with your failure. Sometimes people become angry when you become healthy because they benefited from you being emotionally weak. They preferred you when you doubted yourself. They preferred you when you explained everything. They preferred you when you accepted apologies without change. They preferred you when your fear of losing them was stronger than your desire to protect yourself. But the moment you become emotionally independent, the old methods begin to lose their power. You no longer react immediately. You no longer defend yourself against every accusation. You no longer beg to be understood. You no longer chase people who repeatedly withdraw affection to punish you. You no longer confuse emotional intensity with genuine love. You become calm, clear, and disciplined. That does not mean you become cold. It means you become wise. It means you can care without surrendering your dignity. You can forgive without restoring access. You can understand someone's pain without allowing their pain to become an excuse for hurting you. You can wish them well without inviting them back into your life. This is maturity. Maturity is not proving how much mistreatment you can survive. Maturity is recognizing when survival has become self-betrayal. It is understanding that love should not require you to lose your confidence, your voice, your identity, or your peace. Your healing becomes powerful when you stop trying to win an invisible competition. You do not need to appear happier than them. You do not need to find someone new before they do. You do not need to post your success hoping they will notice. You do not need to create jealousy to prove that you have moved on. When you genuinely move forward, you no longer perform your freedom. You live it. You wake up without checking whether they contacted you. You enjoy your day without wondering what they are doing. You make plans without imagining their reaction. You begin to trust your own judgment again. You begin to recognize yourself again. And slowly the person who once occupied your thoughts becomes a lesson instead of a destination. That is victory. Victory is not watching them fall. Victory is watching yourself rise. Victory is not hearing them admit they were wrong. Victory is reaching a place where their confession is no longer required for your peace. Victory is not their return. Victory is becoming so emotionally strong that their return cannot confuse your direction. Do not build your future around the hope that someone will regret losing you. Build your future around the certainty that you will never again regret losing yourself. Let your standards become stronger than your loneliness. Let your purpose become louder than your memories. Let your discipline become greater than your temporary emotions. You are not healing so they can see what they lost. You are healing so you can finally recognize what you almost lost within yourself. Your voice, your confidence, your identity, your peace. Recover those things, protect them, and never again place them in the hands of someone who treats your heart as a tool for control. The greatest victory is not being remembered by the person who hurt you. The greatest victory is becoming free from the need to be remembered at all.